It is my privilege to introduce to you Ruth Carlson. She is the Executive Director of the Eagle Forum Education Center in St. Louis. One of her newest activities is creating webinars. She's doing one of these for MOPS to assist in communicating, educating, and training throughout the state. This tool has tremendous promise, and I personally can hardly wait for it to get up because it'll save us lots and lots of miles. She was a delegate to the Missouri Republican Caucus and state conventions in 04 and 08 and attended the 08 National Republican Convention, though not as a delegate. In her free time, she is active in church, a willing campaign volunteer, and a citizens activist and advisor to the Missouri Precinct Project. Please join me in welcoming Ruth Carlson.
Well, I'm honored to be here, but there are so many here that I know are veterans and have been involved so much longer than I have, so sometimes it's just a bit humbling to be asked to speak to people who I know a lot more than I do. And I also commend you for being here, for giving up an entire Saturday to come and be involved in government. I don't think that there's enough praise that we can give to people who give and sacrifice of their own personal time and energy and money to attend conferences like this. And I especially want to thank the MOP leadership, Anita and Frida and Judy and other people who've been involved, because I know that it's your own personal time and money and energy, even more so than people in attending, that made sure this was possible. And I know that one thing is certain, that we will not have a country unless there's people like Frida and Judy and Anita who are willing to basically invest in these ideas to educate other people. And I thank you, and I thank them for their willingness to trust me with 15 minutes, so I'll try and respect that very much. So my speech today is titled, "The Most Important Office Isn't the President of the United States," which is based off of a brochure that you can find in your packet. And I work for Eagle Forum. Phyllis Schlafly is the author of this particular pamphlet. You can order it from Eagle Forum so that you can have them to distribute and to recruit other people and to inspire them. And you might say, well, wait a second, isn't the President of the United States the leader of the Western world and someone who has all of this this powerful power? Well, yes, he is. He's probably the most powerful man in the world, but the presidency is not the most powerful office in the world. Another office is more powerful because it chooses whose names will appear on the ballot for elective office, and what will be the policies of the political parties that provide the major support for those candidates. To understand why this office is so powerful, you must understand the 7 steps of government, and those are outlined in the pamphlet, and I'm just going to briefly outline them for you right now. So first, to change things, you have to change the law. It's very important to understand that rules determine outcomes, even more so the law. So if you see things you want to change, you have to change the laws. So where are there things that we want to change about our country? The taxes, deficits, schools, crime, abortion, gay rights, governmental funding of anti-social projects, government overregulation, or even government subsidizing business, which was the main topic of the special session here in Missouri. Our Constitution makes Congress the most powerful branch of government. It can pass laws, impose taxes, and spend our money. State legislatures are powerful as well, very powerful over the public schools. So if you don't like the present policies, what are we going to do about it? That's why we're all here. Our Constitution gives us a way to remedy laws, policy, and taxes. Members of the House of Representatives and Congress and the lower houses of each state representative in turn, they run every 2 years. Every 2 years, we have the ability to change laws. So the first thing we always have to remember is to change things, we have to change the law. Secondly, to change laws, you have to change the people who make them. I know that at the Eagle Forum, we spend a lot of time sending out alerts so that people can contact their representatives to tell them, this is how we think you should vote or how you should think about things. But deep down, I kind of know. I think Todd Aiken's going to vote a certain way, and I think Russ Carnahan's going to vote a certain way. And so unfortunately, I think on the federal level, sometimes we can call them, but when it comes down to it, if you've got a person of integrity who believes in limited government, they're going to vote generally a certain way, and people on the other side are going to vote a certain way. At the same time, there are things like the patent reform bill that just went through Congress that I do think that Eagle Forum had a major play in influencing people to vote the right way on that. Unfortunately, it still passed and was signed by Obama, and the patent system in America has now changed from first to invent to first to file. I don't know if you know that or not. So Congress and the state legislatures pass thousands of laws every year. No citizen or group can possibly read and research all of them to find out in advance or alert our friends to go with a letter writing campaign and phone calling. Congressional and state legislators who've been elected by liberal and anti-family groups will not be receptive to our messages. The best way for our values to be represented is for you and I to elect someone who believes and shares our values and who's honest and has integrity. If we want to change the law or the taxes, we must be electing representatives we can rely on and count on to vote conservative, pro-family, all of the time. So to change the laws, we have to change the people who make those laws. The third principle, to be elected, your candidate must be on the ballot. How often have we voted for the lesser of two evils when we didn't like either of those candidates running for an important office? Have we ever wondered why? Why do we keep ending up in the same place? Despite all the rhetoric, both candidates seem to back the same sort of agendas. Some may be a little bit slower, moving in that direction slower than the others. How many times has a good conservative not made it to the ballot, onto the ballot? So to get on the ballot, you have to win the primary, and you have to be nominated. And in different states, that happens in different ways. The winners in party primaries or convention will be the candidates who appear on the ballot in November. Except for very rare occasions, all candidates, they must win this primary. Third candidates are possible, but unless a candidate has as much money as Ross Perot, running for a third-party candidate probably won't be successful. And I think even in my experience, I think election laws actually work against third-party candidates even making it to the ballot because it takes so much time and energy just to get on the ballot. And that's why the primary process is so important, and that's why it's important to understand how the party works. And because it's different in every state, the brochure that we've handed out has one weakness in that it's meant to be used in all 50 states. And so John Putnam is going to be speaking after me to speak specifically to a lot of how the party works here in Missouri. Because in certain states like Utah, it's a convention, that's how you win a primary. In Missouri, it is generally by election. But in special circumstances, like special elections, it's actually the party committees who make nominations. For example, in St. Louis County, we had a race. There's a new office for auditor. Actually, it's not a new office, but instead of being appointed, it's elected. So we had one, it was the St. Louis County Republican Committee who selected the Republican candidate. And in this particular instance, it was a perfect example of how there was a sort of an establishment candidate, someone who had been involved in politics for a very long time. And so he had a lot of support simply because he'd been in politics and he had supposedly more name ID. And then you had a newer candidate who had actually been in the real estate business and seemed like a better candidate but didn't have as many connections. So he kind of was at a disadvantage, and it went to the Central Committee and it came down to like one vote. And the newer, less experienced politician sort of candidate won the vote at the Central Committee. And it came down to more conservatives being on the Central Committee than the more establishment candidates. And then because he didn't actually end up going on to win that election, but I think that has to do with the county being leaning Democrat and really not having a strong structure, not having people who are walking door to door, and not having a really effective way to turn out voters in the county. But then another example is the Democrat candidate was a state representative. So because he gave up his position, that means there's another special election. So again, you had the Republican committee and the Democrat committee who chose the nominees for what would be the special election because they didn't hold an elective primary. So while we have primaries in Missouri, it's still very important to have conservatives on the Central Committee and part of those committees for when you have special elections to make sure it's the conservative who wins the nomination. And of course, the election in New York, that was the special election that was the big deal. I think it was New York 27, where you had a liberal Republican committee that chose a nomination that was more liberal. So there's lots of examples on how the Republican committee is important. Those offices are important for making sure conservative gets the nomination. Candidates endorsed by the party usually win the primary election. That's point number 5 in the brochure. This point needs a little explaining because some party organizations will claim not to endorse candidates before the primary, but favoritism towards those certain candidates is like an endorsement. I'd say that this is the case especially in St. Louis County. I don't know about other areas, but a lot of Republican groups, including the Central Committee, will say we don't endorse in the primary. But I think there's such clear favoritism towards certain candidates that it's almost like an endorsement. A recent example has to do with the new 2nd congressional district race where you have Ed Martin opposing Ann Wagner. And Chris Christie is coming to Missouri for the GOP, for some sort of GOP event, and it turns out that somebody asked Chris Christie or introduced him to Ann Wagner, and he's now doing an Ann Wagner event. And Ed Martin was never given the opportunity to necessarily have Chris Christie come in and do a fundraiser for him and all these different things. But basically, even though Ann Wagner does not have the Republican endorsement, she is receiving favoritism from the party, which essentially becomes like an endorsement. And that's why you have to have enough conservatives, enough people like us involved in that structure so that you don't have that favoritism happening if you're not going to allow endorsements, or you're the one influencing that favoritism. Because I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily against supporting conservative candidates if they're the best candidate. I mean, the people who are showing up are running the show. And if we're not showing up, then we're not going to be part of making some of those decisions. Secondly, only a minority of Americans vote in primary elections. These voters might simply vote for the first candidate who knocks on their door or whose name they've heard on the radio without even knowing other candidates are in the race before the primary. Most voters don't investigate primary candidates or even find out who they are. A great example of how walking to door to door is the best strategy for a state representative candidate comes from a district in West St. Louis County. The district had 3 candidates. It had one young man who just got out there and walked the district. There was another guy who had been a staffer for Jim Talent and basically got all of Jim Talent's old phone lists and just planned on calling all of those people and putting up yard signs there and doing some sort of, radio and some ads. And then there was a third guy who thought, you know what, I'm just going to walk towards the end and I'll be the second candidate that goes around and they'll meet me and I'm a little bit more middle-aged and might seem a little bit more mature and ready for being a state representative. Well, who do you think won this race? The first guy, the young guy who went door to door, met the voters, and because they met him first, he was known by them. And once someone says, I'm going to vote for you, or they commit to putting a yard sign out in their yard, they're going to keep that commitment. And that's a great example for how going door to door, it's Koenig, Representative, I think it's Andrew Koenig, is the young man. And we went to the same church for a while, and I remember meeting him early on. I went over to his house with one of Judy Hahn, a committee woman, and I just said, you know what? I'm done. Oh, wow. Okay. So I thought that I timed this out pretty well. But
take 5 of mine. You gave me some.
Oh, okay. I'll take 5. I'll start right. Mine only says 13 and a half. Okay, so anyways, but it was really exciting because I basically said, because my mom's on the, has been, or she still is on the Central Committee in St. Louis County, And so I've been involved since before I could even vote, handing out literature for candidates. And there was a candidate in North County, and he walked door to door. And he walked his district 3 times. And so in a district now that, like, a Republican, the last time that there was a Republican this last time, he got 35% of the vote. And, 6 or 8 years ago, there was a Republican who was there. And it's because he walked door to door. And you don't have to, when you meet someone and people see that you're just a regular person, and you can win votes without necessarily being partisan, is what I'm trying to say. And so I told Andrew, I said, you know what, just walk. Just get out there and walk and walk and walk and walk and walk, and you will meet the voters, and you will be able to win this. That's how you win on the local level. And he went out and did that. He just stayed very focused, and he met voters, and that's what everyone in this room is going to have to do. We're going to have to find that time, we're going to have to block that time off, and we're going to have to go meet people in our neighborhoods. So I think I kind of went on a little bit about how, a majority of people, when they go to the primary, they don't necessarily know who they're going to vote for. And the Missouri Precinct Project is about going out there, being strategic, finding those voters, and making sure when they get to the polls, they know the best candidate to vote for because we've educated them. So candidates endorsed by the party usually win the primary, which means candidates who have the support structure, that have people in the grassroots who are out there supporting them, those are going to be the people that win the primaries. Ed Martin needs support. He needs grassroots people out there walking. And that's my own opinion. That's not the opinion of Eagle Forum or MOP or anyone else. That's Ruth Carlson's personal opinion. And it's important to be involved in the candidate process. So, let's see here. So 7, it's easy to be elected a precinct committee person. That's the 7th principle, which is basically the people who show up are the people who are basically going to reap the benefits of that. There's a lot of these positions that are empty. It's going to a boring meeting once a month or whatever. Some of this stuff is just really tedious kinds of work, and it's the people who show up who make the decisions. And you can find, if there's an empty place, you can get appointed to it, you can challenge someone, or if they're a great person already in that position, you don't need to challenge them, you can just support them in that township position. Or I think there's even a point of, even if they're a poor committee person, if it would be a difficult challenge, just get out there and walk your area, because you don't have to be the official elected person to have a huge influence in all of this process. So I think there's a number of ways that you can go about it. So it's just always just the principles. To change things, we have to change the law. To change the laws, you have to change the people who make them. To be elected, the candidate has to be on the ballot. To get on the ballot in November, you've got to win the primary. So we've got to be the most strategic that we can to win the primaries, and meeting voters face-to-face is the most effective way to do it. So we need to find the voters who are most likely going to agree with us. We need to visit them, we need to make sure they have the information they have, and we need to turn them out. And that's how we can be effective. So it matters who's in office, it matters who's in these structures. In these structures, it's important to be strategic, and the committee process is really the process that we have. So I'm just going to conclude with that, because our involvement matters. It matters very much that we're in this room. It matters very much that this project is happening in Missouri, and I think that we're blessed to have such a strategic group of people and movement and people here today. Thank you very much.
I'm here to introduce our next speaker, John Putnam. John Putnam graduated from school in Carthage in 1962. He graduated in 1969 from the University of Missouri, and in 2007 from the Assemblies of God Theological Seminary. John has a long work history in various businesses as owner and manager. He's married since 1969, and he and his wife have 4 children that were all homeschooled. And guess what? They all went to great universities and graduated.
They all dress themselves in the morning, too.
John has been active in various community and service activities as well as political activities. He's strong in Missouri Right to Life and involved in education issues. He's also very active in political activities, like he's the Republican committeeman in Jasper County and the chairman of the Central Committee. He was a delegate to the Republican National Convention in 1996 in a very nice place, San Diego. He's the director of the 7th Fair Tax in the 7th Congressional District and state co-director. He's also organizer for the Southwest Missouri Conservative Network, organizer for the Tea Party Patriots, and state coordinator for Healthcare Compact. So he's a true patriot. Please help me welcome John Putnam.
Thank you, Nita. We could have saved some time if we left a lot of that out, but and I should correct, I'm no longer the state director for the fair tax. I think that that honor belongs to Bill Phelps, former lieutenant governor, and Bev Martin, who's here as a grassroots director for the fair tax. So if you want to know more about that project, we'll sure be happy to talk to you about it. Thank you, ladies, for doing this. I want to say that I believe these three women that have started Missouri Precinct Project are the Deborahs in Missouri of 2011. I guess we started this project. If you know who Deborah was in the Old Testament, it seems like the men couldn't get around to furnishing a good judge in the nation of Israel, and a woman had to step up and do the job. Not that women are not just as capable, and many times they're more capable, but in this case, certainly these ladies remind me of Deborah. They are sounding the trumpet. I believe that this is the most important meeting being held in Missouri today. I know it seems small, but it is not the president that everybody's looking at, as Ruth has said. It is the precinct that holds the key to a long-term change in America. If you need to have that underscored, and I have a dozen different ways I'd like to do that, but let me just say that the man who's president now is president because one of the parties chose to stop throwing bombs, to put on a coat and tie, to cut their hair, and to join the precinct position and become the precinct committee women and committee men in the 1960s and 1970s, and now run that party. That is clear evidence that it will happen. It does take a little bit longer than the next election, but some of us started working on this a few years ago, and most of my assignment really is to talk about the nuts and bolts of the party structure, but I can't resist trying to impress people with the importance of this approach. The last thing I'll say about that is the ultimate authority in my own life and experience has become the Scripture. And if I were to ask you today who began the precinct strategy, who would you say from the Bible invented or recommended the precinct strategy? Does it really go back that far? Jethro. This could very easily be called the Jethro Project. And I just want to read a passage to you from Exodus 18. It says, "It came about the next day that Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood about Moses from the morning until the evening. Now, when Moses' father-in-law saw all that he was doing for the people, he said, 'What is this thing you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge, and all the people stand about you from morning until evening?' Moses said to his father-in-law, 'Because these people come to me and inquire of God. When they have a dispute, it comes to me, and I judge between a man and his neighbor, and I make known the statutes of God and his laws.' And Moses' father-in-law said to him, 'The thing you are doing is not good. You will surely wear out both yourself, these people who are with you, and these people who are with you, for the task is too heavy for you. You cannot do it alone. Now listen to me.'" This is pretty stern advice. You ever gotten advice from your father-in-law? It's a serious time. Now listen to me, and I will give you counsel, and God be with you. You be the people's representative before God, and you bring the disputes to God. Then teach them the statutes and make known to them the way in which they are to walk and the work that they are to do. Furthermore, you shall select out of all the people able men, qualification number 1, who fear God, qualification number 2, men of truth, number 3, and those who hate dishonest gain. The Old King James word there was covetousness. You know what covetousness is? It's wanting somebody else's stuff. And you know what the problem in America is right now? We're being run by a bunch of people that want other people's honestly earned stuff. Okay, so this is really right on for us today. Let them judge the people at all times, and let it be that every major dispute they will bring to you, but every minor dispute they themselves will judge. So it will be easier for you, and they will bear the burden with you. If you do this thing, and God commands you, the word of the Lord, he's pretty direct here, saying, I know what God's will is here, then you will be able to endure, and all these people will what? Will go to their place in peace. Is that what we've lost today, is the peace that we once had in American society? I think so. So Moses listened to his father-in-law and did all that he had said. And Moses chose able men out of all of Israel and made them heads over the people, leaders of thousands, of hundreds, of 50s, and of tens. And they judged the people at all times. The difficult disputes they would bring to Moses, but every minor dispute they themselves would judge. Then Moses bade his father-in-law farewell, and he went his way to his own land. So this is exactly the precinct strategy. I hope there's a handout of somewhere, I think Judy was going to put it in, of Thomas Jefferson's statement about the importance of the precinct. Some of you may know this as the ward or the township, but the most universal term is the precinct. And I hope we'll have a chance to reflect on Thomas Jefferson's words about this. It's in a little blue piece of paper. Is that in the folders? Great. I didn't have a copy of it. So let me say that most people are suggesting that do you have this handout of mine yet? Has that been passed out? Yes. Okay. I'd love to show Dr. Utopia's cartoon from 1938, but we don't have time for that. Some would suggest that we should throw all the incumbents out of office and vote for a third party that is uncorrupted by years of power. That would be a great idea, but it just won't work, folks. Yes, I work in the Republican Party. I'm here to say that I don't have a particular allegiance to the Republican Party. I'm a Christian and a conservative and a Republican in that order. I do think the Republican Party offers an easier structure or an easier avenue for us to regain control. The chance of a third party coming along is not going to happen unless you have a better example than Ross Perot in 1992 when he got 18% of the vote and elected Bill Clinton. We have to infuse one of the parties, and I think we could take over either of the parties, any of the parties. There are other parties out there besides the two main ones, but the problem we face today is mostly caused not by corruption and party bosses at the top. Yes, they are there, but why are they there? They're because of the ignorance and the apathy of people at the grassroots level. And that's what we're trying to address here. So I have laid out the things that you need to understand about how this system works. This is true in all the major parties, but only the Republicans and the Democrats are organized enough to be players with enough clout to get somebody actually elected when the elections show up. So first thing you must understand is the political jurisdictions in the state of Missouri. There are 3,425 precincts in Missouri. Those are what we're targeting. because the precinct leaders organize 114 counties. The 114 county leaders effectively organize 163 legislative districts and 34 senatorial districts, which in turn, the people who do well at those jobs usually ascend to leadership and become the congressional leaders and ultimately the state senators. So you can see the same strategy that Moses outlined boils down to 3,425 precincts in Missouri. Now, I agree with Ruth also that, well, let me put it this way. Half of those precincts are not filled. Okay, so we're down to what, 1,700 approximately precincts that have positions in them. So we only need half of 1,700 if you just cut this to a majority election deal, a majority plus one. We need about 800 to 900 people in the state of Missouri, and we can take over either party, all parties, and become the influencers that Ruth so ably described. And this is surely doable. Unfortunately, we can't all be in the same area, and we have to find a lot of these positions in rural precincts that are unfilled, but it's not hard if you know what to do. The second thing you need to understand is how the parties are organized. And if you'll look on the back of the second page, my wife, who is visual rather than auditory, has helped me by drawing a pyramid of how the parties are organized. It's quite confusing. I became a committee man in 1984. It probably took me 10 years to figure out how the party works, because the party leadership holds this information very close to their vest, not necessarily because they are corrupt and ugly, mean people. It's just a whole lot easier if you don't have to call everybody in the county. If you can make a couple of phone calls and tell people who are apathetic or raising their kids and taking them to t-ball games and busy, making a living, and you can just tell them this is what we want you to do, they'll all show up and do it. That's what we've done for 40 years in my lifetime, adult lifetime, and because of that, they just go on doing what they're doing, and in most cases, they would love to have the help. And they probably agree with you philosophically, but it's just been too much trouble to make certain things happen because they don't have the grassroots support. And so somebody calls from the top and says, this is what we want you to do at the next election, and they figure out how to do it. So in my county, Jasper County, there are 74 precincts at the bottom. We have two people, a man and a woman, in each of these precinct positions, so we have 148 precinct positions. Currently, we only have, I think, around 80 of those seats filled because most people think this is just boring or too much trouble. But we have a strong majority of those 80, and it's a very conservative county. We don't take our instructions from anybody. We figure out what's best for the people, what's constitutional, and we run the county that way. These county people come together right after the primary and elect legislative district chairman and vice chairman. There's a man and a woman who are elected as the chairman and the vice chairman for each legislative district in the county. That's what I say, 164. And those chairman and vice chairman, plus the county chairman and vice chairman that reside in a senatorial district, get together a couple of weeks later and elect. They become the senatorial district committee. Okay, I hope you can understand that. The precinct executives or chairman, vice chairman, women, become the legislative district chairman and vice chairman. Those people then make up the senatorial district committee. And they also staff or serve on the congressional district committee, which really doesn't have a lot of responsibility in terms of electing the hierarchy, but can play an important role in the whole process. But the key positions that you should be aware of are the precinct positions, the legislative district chairman and vice chairman, who become the senatorial district chairman and vice chairman. Who become the senatorial district committee members. Those committee members, in my 32nd senatorial district, there are 18 of us, and we choose 2 people, a man and a woman, to sit on the state committee. So each senatorial district, there are 64 senatorial districts, there is a man and a woman that sits on the state committee. So what does that make? 128 committee people plus the national committee man, the national committee woman, and the state chairman. So there's a total of 71, if I'm doing the math right, people who decide the policy for either party, the Republicans and Democrats, in Missouri. These overlap. It's all established by state statute. And there's one error in the top. The national committee has 150 people. It says 100. At the state presidential convention every 4 years, the national committee man and the national committee woman to elect to represent the state party at the national level is elected. That's 100 seats. And then the state chairman of each state is also on that committee. So the national committee is made up of 150 very influential people from each state. All too often, these people are elected based on 2 things: how much money they've given to the party and how willing they are to do what they're instructed to do. But if we control the grassroots seats, if we control the counties, then we can control who those people are that sit on the state committee, and we can control who sits on the national committee, and we can be the influencers, as Ruth has said. Where am I on time? 5? Okay, I've written most of this out, so you can go ahead and read a lot of this. But the second thing is to understand the party structure. The third thing is to understand the duties of the precinct leaders. Those are, very succinctly, to elect your party leaders, as I have described, to identify the voters in your precinct, which is going to be talked about in detail as we go forward. And I want to highly recommend this website that's on your page called championthevote.com. This is incredible technology that will identify you. If you sign up, you'll be a champion to contact the people in your neighborhood. Very sophisticated marketing people have identified your neighbors and your precinct who are unregistered, conservative voters. Maybe they subscribe to Christianity Today magazine, or maybe they bought Sarah Palin's book, Going Rogue. And they've tracked all this, and they know who's registered and who's not registered, and they will show, using Google Earth technology, they will show where your house is with a blue dot, and where all the unregistered, conservative, probably Christian voters are right next to you in your precinct. Their goal is to register 5 million people after the same fashion that not exactly the same fashion that Acorn has used, but they understand that if we could up the conservative voter pool by 5 million people, we can probably avoid what the Democrats have planned for us, which is to try to energize the liberal voters to continue to vote, to take your stuff and give it away to somebody else. So that voter identification job is largely your job if you sign up for this. The people at Champion the Vote are making it very easy for us to do that. And then third, assist in the Get Out the Vote campaign. not thinking necessarily about the general election, but we've got to think more about the primary election, because if you don't like who is elected at the general election, it's because of who got nominated at the primary level. And if you don't like who got the primary nomination, you better back all the way up to the next section that shows when the filing takes place for these positions. And so you've got to understand the election calendar, which is point 4 on your handout, and the ones that you really need to be aware of in the context that we're talking about. All the election dates are there, but the ones you really need to be aware of, number C, February 28th to March 27th, you will go down and file for not just a for a legislative district position or state senator position or the visible offices, but you will file for precinct positions. Most of the time, you don't know about these because Missouri moved 15 years ago not to put them on the ballot unless they're contested. If just one person signs up, why should we spend the money to print extra ballots? So you haven't seen this position. The average 90% of the people I talk to at tea parties don't even know this position exists anymore. But you go to your county, some townships and wards require you to bring a petition that shows 10 other people want you to be their representative. In my county, I just go in and fill out a piece of paper. Since 1984, only one time has anybody ever else filed against me. And so I've been elected by default because nobody else shows up. That's what we're talking about here. If we show up, we control the agenda. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit more about how to get elected if you're challenged, how to run if somebody else is already in the seat. Toward that end, the first thing you probably need to do is find out if they're a constitutional conservative or not. And I've put 2 handouts in the back of this page that are 12 questions you can ask anybody at any level of office and determine whether they're constitutional conservatives or not. It's based on the 5,000-year leap and questions that have been developed by the National Center for Constitutional Studies. I've used it for years in interviewing candidates, and it's just a checkoff box that will guide your interviews with anybody running for office. And that should hopefully help you determine whether you should run for this position or not. If there's a good constitutional conservative that's in there and experienced, I would recommend that you go to them and you say, I want to become your understudy. I want to spend the next 2 years doing what you do, helping you do what you're supposed to do. In many cases, you'll find these people have not even been showing up for the meetings. They've just been doing what somebody else told them to do. If they haven't been active, if they haven't been going to meetings, then you should file against them. You should go on your computer and get a Word document out and make a 3-column piece of paper and put your picture on it and put a little list of your qualifications and go to the houses in your precinct. Now, don't go to every house in your precinct. Go to your county chairman, to your county clerk, and get a list of who votes in the primary elections. They can give you a list. In my county, I've got 500 registered voters in my precinct. Only 100 of them show up to vote. And technology today allows us to give you that list in street walking order. So you just go down the street and you say, these people don't vote, these people do. Go down there, knock on the door, shake their hand. I want to be your precinct representative at the party level. Give them your flyer so they'll put that up on the refrigerator. When it comes vote time, if you're challenged, they will be there. That's how it works. You don't even have to have a platform. But if you ask a couple of questions, you quickly determine what they want to see. I have to stop. The rest of the important elections here are in bold. The things you need to understand after you get elected to a precinct committee position is that on August 7th is the primary. August 21st, the county committees in Missouri will reorganize and elect county officials. On the 22nd, they will elect legislative district chairman and vice chairman. On August 25th, they will elect senatorial district committee chairman and vice chairman. On August 28th, They will reorganize the congressional district. On November 22nd, the state committeemen and committeewomen will be elected for each of these senatorial districts. I was supposed to talk about the caucus system that's coming up. The caucus system for each presidential election year is a little different. Maybe we can get into that a little bit. A big thing happened 2 days ago when the state party decided not to bind delegates to the national convention by the state presidential preference primary. These delegates are going to be chosen and bound to whoever they say they want to vote. It puts the nomination, the Missouri delegates, about 50 Missouri delegates, in the hands of the people that care the most and are the best informed. I'm a big believer in the caucus system. I think the presidential primary system, and there are reasons for that, but we're going back to the old way this time.
Praise
And,
God.
That's to our advantage. You'll just have to read the rest of this. I'm over time, but I'll be here to answer questions all day. Thank you.